Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. I am your host, Matt Cooper. With me is my co-host, Matt Jackson.
What's going on, guys?
We are without Rupert today. He's on a little business trip out to California. So we're holding down the fort. But on today's show, we've got an exciting one. We are continuing our second look series / ranking battle series. So if you missed it last week, we're kind of going back to some guys that we scouted early in the process that we feel like are relevant to go back and take another look at, either just because we looked at them a long time ago or because it's guys that are really close in our rankings together, or maybe even guys that we disagreed on the first time we watched. So maybe you pointed out something that I didn't see or vice versa, and we said, hey, let's go take another look at that. So on today's show, we are going to be looking at a trio of running backs in Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska, Jonah Coleman out of Washington, and Mike Washington Jr. out of Arkansas. These are the three guys that for us were like neck and neck in our recliner rating, which if you don't know, that's kind of our proprietary film grading metric. And these are the guys that are in contention for RB2 for us. So Jeremiah Love is miles out in front of the pack. And really, these three guys were clustered together very close. And so as we're trying to finalize our rankings before the NFL draft, we wanted to take a look back at these three guys and kind of see, where do we stand? Do we see anything differently than we saw it the first time? And how do we rank them when it's all said and done? It can be so helpful even just to watch guys back to back and see like immediately one right after the other, which guy looked faster when you watch them back to back. You can tell that easier than maybe if you watched them 2 weeks apart. So, we will be looking at some stats courtesy of PFF. We will be comparing our trio to the 165 other FBS running backs with at least 100 plus rushing attempts in 2025. And for receiving, we will be comparing them to the 136 other running backs with 20 plus targets. So, let's get into it. We're going to go trait by trait, not as in-depth as we would if you've been following our Inside the Prospect series, where we break it down in a lot of depth, because we're covering three guys instead of one guy on the show. We're more or less like, if you want to hear our original take on these guys, go back and listen to the original show that we did on all three of these guys, because they each got their own show. But this one is going to be more of like, did we see anything differently and how do we compare them to each other? So with all of that kind of intro out of the way, let's get into it. As always with the running back position, we start with vision and patience. And I'll throw it to you, Jackson, and we'll start with Emmett Johnson. What did you notice, if anything, differently with his vision and patience than the first time that you watched?
Yeah, I think this was one of the bigger takeaways for me when it came to the running backs as a whole. When I first watched the game film, it's easy. You made the point in a group chat. We were talking last night, I believe it was, when it's easy whenever you watch a guy's first game to let that be kind of your overarching takeaway from a lot of the film watch. And naturally, in the film room, I was watching games back to back to back. And one of the things I really noticed on the first watch was like, man, like this guy comes away as like having really, really creative vision, like can create on his own, does a lot of like advanced vision to draw guys in and explode the other direction. And that kind of, I don't want to say tainted my feel for the rest of the games, but it definitely did impact it. Or I went back and, as advice to you guys, kind of watched the games in reverse order a little bit, just for funsies, right? And what I really found about Emmett Johnson is what almost felt like to me advanced vision, where he was like seeing a lane, drawing a guy in, exploding the other direction. He has these like ability to jump cut, to stack jump cuts back to back to back, and just show really advanced vision. It kind of felt, watching it this time around, that I don't know if it was as advanced vision as I thought it was. I don't know if it was really that he has advanced vision or he's an athlete and has some athletic traits and elusiveness and knows how to use that well. And that was the overarching thing that I really got away from his vision. Like, so for me, I still think he has great vision. I still think behind the line of scrimmage, he sees the holes pretty well. Like, I still have him as a 7 for vision, but I dropped him from an 8 to a 7. Like, I don't feel like it's great vision. I feel like he more often relies on some of the elusiveness traits that he has.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned watching it in reverse because that's to me like not just a for funsies. It's like first impressions matter, and so that first game that Emmett Johnson has, like if you're looking in the Dynasty Nerds film room, and you just go in the order that it's kind of listed on there, the very first one is against Maryland, and that was probably his best game. I mean, he just looked really really good in that game in a lot of different areas. Um, and so going back and like rewatching, but starting with the bottom one and working my way up to the top instead of going from top to bottom, it does kind of change the way that you view things. And I gave a specific example, or I will give a specific example of this. So at the 38-second mark, like again, this if you're using the Dynasty Nerds film room, the timestamp 38 seconds, I believe it was versus Maryland. He has this play where he starts to bounce outside and then he makes this really hard jump cut to the inside and it like sucks the whole defense in. And then he immediately makes this hard jump cut back to the outside again. And the outside is now just wide open because he sucked the whole defense in and he gets the edge and he gets a big chunk gain. And if you're 38 seconds into your very first game for Emmett Johnson and you don't know anything about him, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like amazing vision. And but for me, when it's your fourth game that you're watching, you're going, no, it's not. He just jumped like he has this habit. I at least from what I noticed, and I have multiple timestamps written down in my notes of when he would do this. There's a lot of times it feels like he just made this big exaggerated jump cut in a general direction and hoped that something good came out of it. And he has this really explosive jump cut. And so sometimes, like in this instance versus Maryland, sometimes good things did come out of it. But there were other times that it's like, dude, there was a hole wide open to your right, and you just made this hard jump cut to your left, right into like 3 defenders. Like, are you even looking, or are you just like spray and pray jump cuts? Like at times it felt like watching somebody that doesn't really have a lot of football IQ playing a Madden game, and he sees a
Yeah.
defender and he just hits the juke button, and
Yeah.
and he hopes it gets him somewhere good. So I was a little, I mean, even the initial podcast that you guys did on Emmett Johnson, I was out of town and I came back and listened to it and you guys were just glowing about him. And I watched and I liked him. And we're going to talk about it today. There's a lot of things to like about Emmett Johnson, but I had a lot more concerns than what you guys noted the first time you guys did a podcast on him. And one of those things was vision. I think, again, for me, he's at a 7 for vision, I believe. So same grade that you now have him at is what I had him at, I think, to begin with. And you guys were all at like 8.5 on that. And I was just like, I'm not quite there. Like at times it looks really good. And at times it looks really bad, I think, to me. And the patience is not always there either. There's times where it's like, man, if you would have just waited for your blocks to develop,
Yeah.
you know, there could have been something there, but you just kind of picked a direction and went for it. And so for me, it's fine. It's not bad vision. I wouldn't call it advanced. Even that play now, going back and watching it against Maryland, I'm pretty sure he just reacted. Like he thought that the inside was the right way to go, so he went inside, and then when he saw a bunch of defenders in his face, he bounced it back outside. I don't think he was, like, thinking 3 steps ahead. I think, uh, I mean, who really knows? Like, I guess Emmett Johnson knows. He's the only one that could really tell us, like, were you playing chess while they were playing checkers, or did you just get lucky there?
Yeah. And I will
Uh,
say, like, it felt more often watching it the way that I watched it. It felt more often that I noted more like, oh, like he should have taken this hole, or like this lane was open, but he instead bounced it outside or something like that. Like I noticed that more this watch than I did the second.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk Washington Jr. and Coleman as from a vision standpoint. We'll kind of um, hit them both together. Was there anything that you noticed different on either of those guys from that
So
standpoint?
I will say for Jonah Coleman, I had him in a 6 for vision, originally on the first watch, and I didn't really change that at all. His vision is okay, right? It's not great, it's not bad. It's kind of right there with your average vision. I felt like at least for Jonah Coleman a lot, he didn't seem like he was super creative in the background, the backfield. Didn't to me feel like he did a lot to lure guys in and then explode the other direction. That just wasn't something that he was doing. He was gonna run forward, and we're going to talk about this with Coleman, but he was strong and powerful enough that that worked for him. So kind of kept the same thing for Coleman. I will say that out of all of these guys, I think I like Mike Washington Jr.'s vision the best. I felt like
Hmm.
to me, he had good vision and patience, and he kind of marred those both together really well. Was doing some of the things that I thought personally that you know that Emmett Johnson was doing beforehand. Coming back and look at it, like Mike Washington was actually the one that was like luring guys in and playing the leverage game and doing some of that advanced stuff that you would want from the running back position. So, stat one for me, we're going on a tally system, I'm giving point one in vision and patience to Mike Washington.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So for Coleman, I was at a 6.5 for vision, so just a smidge higher than you, and at a 7.5 for patience. So when you compare Coleman and Johnson, I think Johnson has better vision than Coleman. Like he's more creative, he's more instinctive, whereas Coleman just kind of like follows his blocks and takes what's there and just doesn't give you much beyond that. But patience wise, whereas Johnson's maybe prone to just pick a direction and go, I thought Coleman was much more patient, waiting for that hole to open up so that he could hit it. So you're going to get more like coaches are going to like Coleman because he's going to run the scheme. He's going to wait for his blocks to develop. He's going to hit the hole that he was designed to hit. He's going to hit it hard, and he's always going to fall forward. Whereas Johnson, there might be some more of those negative plays, but there's also maybe going to be more chunk plays as well, a little bit more volatile in his style. And then Washington, I think, is kind of the best combo of both. Like he for me, so 6.5 vision for Coleman, 7 vision for Emmett Johnson, 7.5 for Mike Washington Jr. And then on patience, it's 7 for Johnson, 7.5 for Coleman, and it's an 8 for patience for Mike Washington Jr. So Mike Washington was the highest for me in both of those marks. And yeah, I think when a hole is there and he just needs to be decisive and get downhill, he does that. When there's an opportunity to maybe hit a big cutback and spring a big play off script, he has that in his bag too. So overall, really liked that area for Mike Washington. And here on the rankings battle, yeah, tally mark for that in his favor. So let's move on. Let's talk about like elusiveness and tackle breaking because um, you want your running back to get more than what's blocked for them. You want your running back to create those yards after contact or forced missed tackles. And first, I'll just throw it out for these three guys. Is there anything that you saw significantly different than your first watch? And then I'll ask, how do you compare them to each other in these areas?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, again, it feels like I'm harping a lot on Emmett Johnson, but that was the biggest takeaway for me. I think I had on my first watch Emmett Johnson at an 8 for break tackle. He's now at a 6 for break tackle. I don't know what it was that I saw for Emmett Johnson to make me put an 8 there, but it felt like while he is super elusive and he's got just this mean jump cut, like he's not running through guys, like he's not breaking many tackles. He's creating forced missed tackles for sure, but he's not breaking them. And I think that's what the difference was for me. Like it felt too often for me like he just went down on first or second contact. Like if a defender came in and got a really good hand on him, like Emmett Johnson wasn't breaking that tackle. So for me, that was a significant difference in the second watch.
Yeah, and again, that was how I saw it the first time, so that wasn't necessarily a change for me. That was like I listened to you guys on the podcast going like, "Oh man, I've got him at an 8 for contact balance," and I'm going, "What?" Like they're glazing the crap out of this guy. Um, so yeah, for me, like he's an undersized back. He doesn't have really any power to his game. I will say I moved him up on contact balance. So you guys were at like an 8 and I was at like a 6 on that. And now it's like we're kind of meeting in the middle. So like I bumped him up from a 6 to a 7. You bumped him down from an 8 to a 7. And that's not like we're not like comparing notes and going, let's make sure we have the same grades here. It just is like I don't know. We all know what we're looking at, and when you watch the tape twice, there's a better chance that you're going to kind of get it dialed in, I think. And um, so yeah, there's no power to his game, honestly. Like he's just easy to tackle when you get a good hit on him. There's no way around that. It's all over his tape, but he's elusive enough that when you are kind of spinning out of a tackle and you're getting like a glancing hit on your side, he has good enough feet to keep his balance through some of that. And so I saw more broken tackles, I thought, on second watch than I did on first watch. So in some ways, I was kind of the opposite of you, where I don't know if I moved his tackle breaking up, but I did move his contact balance up. So I have him at a 6 for breaking tackles, but I have him at a 9 for elusiveness, which I already had him at a 9, so that's not a change for me. But as far as how he compares to the other guys here, Jonah Coleman, I had him at a 4.
He's essentially the opposite in elusiveness.
Yeah.
As Emmett
Like
Johnson
he
is.
he doesn't like there was one play I noted on the second watch. I don't know if I noticed this the first time where literally like he has space to maybe beat an angle and keep running away from the defense and get a big play, and he just like veers out of his way to ram himself into the defense. Um, he just loves contact. Like he's a
He's the type of running back, right? That he's not going to juke around you, but he's going to run into you and he's going to tell you, "Hey, bring 6 of your friends and like let's see how this goes down." Right? Like he's a power back through and through.
Yeah. So for Jonah Coleman, for me, he's a 4 for elusiveness, but an 8 for breaking tackle. So yeah, kind of the opposite there. And then Mike Washington Jr., maybe a little bit in the middle. Like I have him at a 7 for break tackle and a 6 for elusiveness. So he's not as elusive as Emmett Johnson, and he's not breaking as many tackles as Jonah Coleman, but he can do a little bit of both. Like he can make you miss at times, and he can break the tackle with power at times. There's one particular play against Texas where, man, he lowers that boom and knocks the guy flat on his rear end and then walks into the end zone. And that's fun to watch for Mike Washington. But there's also some plays where you're like, man, at his size, like 6 foot plus, 220 plus pounds, like, man, he can plant that foot in the ground and make this explosive cut and leave a guy laying on the ground. So he does have a little bit of both of those in his game. I brought his elusiveness down a little bit for sure, and I know you did too on this
Yeah.
second watch. So,
Yeah.
I had him at a 7, Mike Washington Jr. for elusiveness, and I moved him down to a 6.
See, I had Mike Washington, excuse me, at a 7.5 on first watch, and I've got him at a 6 now. So that was a significant change in my notes as well.
Yeah, it's like he has those big, powerful cuts that look really flashy when he does it, but I don't think he's making guys miss super frequently on tape, and he's not really stringing multiple moves together. It's more of just like one big powerful cut. So yeah, he has some elusiveness, definitely more than Jonah Coleman, but nowhere near like I wouldn't call it like great or elite or anything along those lines. So yeah, if we're giving tally marks here in the elusive department, clearly it's Emmett Johnson. And as far as the tackle breaking department, to me, it's Jonah Coleman gets that tally mark. So before we continue on with the show here, I do want to take a quick break and let the people know where they can find all of our notes on all of these guys and so many more. And that's couchscouts.com. So we are putting the finishing touches on our rookie guide, which is going to be 70 plus prospects deep. You do the math. If you're in a 12-team league with a 4-round rookie draft, which is what most people play, That's only 48, and we're going 70 plus deep. So we're covering everybody that you would even think about drafting in a rookie draft. Anybody that you've maybe seen some buzz or some hype on X about, we're going to tell you whether you should believe it or not. We're going to have detailed scouting notes in an easy to digest format. We're going to have these proprietary recliner rating grades assigned for each guy. We're going to have our rankings, all of that. And it's in a nice, sleek web-based app. So that is the ultimate tool for dominating your rookie draft. We also have a ton of bonus podcasts where we break down these members over the air, or break down these prospects over the air just for our members. We've got an all 22 film room and so much more. So check it out, couchscouts.com. And we're currently running the promo code DRAFT. You can get 30% off your first year with us. So with all that being said, let's get back into it. And we're going to talk speed, burst, quickness, because that's a big deal at the running back position. You're going to get the ball in your hands and you're supposed to outrun people or make people miss. And so you got to have the athleticism to make it happen. And we've been starting with Emmett Johnson. This time, let's start with somebody else. Mike Washington Jr. was the absolute star of the combine. I mean, at his size, to run what he ran, and I don't have it in front of me, it was like a 4.33 or something like that. I mean, it was a really fast 40-yard dash for a 220 plus pound running back. And some people said, I didn't see that on film. We did. Even the first time that we scouted Mike Washington, we were like, yeah, this guy for his size is very athletic. So did you see anything differently from your first watch to your second watch with Mike Washington Jr.?
No, honestly, I ended up raising his athleticism scores from where I had them. I think I had, based on my first watch, I had his speed or game speed at like 7, and I had his burst acceleration maybe at 7.5. I raised both of those a full point. So I've got Mike Washington's game speed at 8, burst acceleration 8.5. Not as quick. Again, noticed in some of his lateral agility and just some of the short area quickness. He's still good in this, and he has this one cut jump that he can do that looks really powerful at times. But man, if he gets in open space, like, he's fast. That was a biggest takeaway. Like, I felt like I was maybe unfairly grading him. Now that I've gone back and watched all the other prospects in the draft, like, I came away thinking, yeah, Mike Washington is one of the faster, more athletic players at the running back position in this year's class, and that was pretty evident on film.
Yeah, he's a freak. Again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but at his size, to be able to like plant his foot and explode out of a powerful cut like he can, and then just get up to speed, defeat angles, not get run down from behind. Yeah, I had him at an 8.5 for speed, 8.5 for burst, and a 7 for quickness, which I think that was a slight drop. I think I had him at a 7.5 for quickness, and I dropped the quickness down just a little bit, but I think I bumped the speed and the burst up just a hair. But yeah, everything that he showed at the combine, I think translates onto his game tape, and he can absolutely win with athleticism. Like, he sees the hole, he explodes through it fast, gets to the second level before it can close, and he can defeat angles on those linebackers and get to the edge. So yeah, it's not just underwear athleticism at the combine. It is very functional.
And I will say too, like, going to the other two guys, like, I ended up dropping both of the guys' athleticisms on second watch. I believe I had Jonah Coleman at dropped him a half a point. So he's still fast, but he's not just like this dynamic, explosive athlete. That's just not in who he is, which is fine. Like, he does other stuff well. And then I had Emmett Johnson as an 8 for game speed, and I dropped it a whole point. I don't think he is an 8 for game speed after watching the second film.
Yeah, there were a couple times on Emmett Johnson's tape watch where I felt like he had good initial burst, and maybe did defeat an angle for a linebacker to get to the second level. But after the first 15 to 20 yards, you could pretty visibly see him slow down.
Yeah.
The top speed is just not really there for him. And so Jonah Coleman didn't participate in any of these drills at the combine, and Emmett Johnson did all of them, but didn't really do them well. He kind of most of what seen about Emmett Johnson coming out of the combine was negative. Like he didn't test super well athletically. And I will say I bumped Emmett Johnson's quickness from an 8.5 to a 9. Like that dude can change direction so fast. And I still think, despite what the combine says, like he has good enough speed and burst. So I've got him at a 7 in both of those categories. But this was one of those, even just watching back to back these guys, it was like, okay, Coleman clearly has more burst than Emmett Johnson, especially given that he's like a good 20 pounds heavier. Um, Coleman can get up to speed, and it's different when you watch the two. Like he's got more burst. So I had Coleman at a 7.5, and I had Johnson at a 7.5. So I dropped Johnson down to a 7 because I'm like, okay, Jonah Coleman has more burst than him. That's pretty apparent. And then Mike Washington, just night and day. He's just more athletic than the other two, especially in a straight line, like, foot race type of a situation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Washington is quicker than Coleman, but not as quick as Johnson. He's way faster than either of the other two in a straight line. And Emmett Johnson is the most quick, the most jitterbug of the guys. So, let's move on to the next area here. And this is the power aspect of their game. And by the way, that is a 4.33 40-yard dash for Washington Jr. I pulled that up, and it was a 4.56 for Emmett Johnson. But continuing on, physicality, power, contact balance, pad level, kind of the more physical aspect of the game. And we touched on this a little bit earlier when we were talking about tackle breaking. But just to throw some numbers out there, Coleman had 3.58 yards after contact per attempt. Washington had 3.86 yards after contact per attempt. Those are both pretty high numbers. And Emmett Johnson had 2.95 yards after contact per attempt. So a decent bit lower. And that was a bottom 25% number in the FBS. So is that basically what you saw on tape here?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah. I mean, clearly the best power back out of these three is Jonah Coleman. Um, Between my first watch and second watch, like that didn't really change for me. He's got power. He's got good leg drive. He runs with good pad level. Like all those stuff. Were really, I think I honestly raised his pad level a little bit from like an 8 to a 9. Like I love the way he runs and has that low center of gravity. Really contributes to a lot of the stuff that he's able to do in the game. One of my biggest takeaways, like I came away again with Mike Washington. He has a little more power on his game film that I noticed in the second watch than maybe I did the first watch. He's got really good leg drive. He's got almost that dog mentality for me, just to kind of fight for extra yards and to just keep his legs turning and keep going. Like he's what, 220, and he's built like that. Like he's got a nice little power to his game. So even though he's not on the level of like say a Jonah Coleman, I still think he's plenty good enough in the power pad level to really do something. And then I just came away like I had fives for Emmett Johnson in both pad level and power. And I came away still having fives with pad level and power level. And honestly, I think that's being generous. Like I think I could probably drop that down a little
I
bit
agree
and
with
still be
you.
okay with that.
I agree with you. It is generous. I have Emmett Johnson at a 4 for power, and honestly, even the 4 I think feels generous to me. Like there were so many short yardage situations where he just got absolutely stonewalled. When you're already undersized and you don't run with good pad level, like he's such an upright runner. There were so many times that he just, when he dropped his pads, he had some decent balance, not necessarily power, but he had good balance. But when he's upright and he's lighter and he's honestly just doesn't have the play strength, he just goes down so easy. Like it's not even, you're not even pushing forward like half an inch. You're just getting knocked backwards on your behind over and over and over. So, yeah, for me, for this, again, I bumped Emmett Johnson's contact balance up from a 6 to a 7, but I dropped his power down from a 5 to a 4. His pad level was already at a 5 for me. And the other two guys, like, they're 220 plus pounders. Like, this is their strength. This is what they do. Emmett Johnson is a 203 pounder. So this isn't what he does. And that's okay. Like, styles make fights. He's also way more elusive than them. So it is what it is. I just don't want to pretend like, I think, and I'm not saying you guys were pretending, this was really like your initial evaluation, but when you were on talking about Emmett Johnson last time you were on the show, which I think that was on the bonus show for our Scout Potato members. But y'all were much higher in some of these power elements, and it made it seem like Emmett Johnson was this really well-rounded back. And as a result, you guys had him graded overall as a fantasy starter. And I was just seeing a much more limited player than that. Like, he's good at what he does, but he's not good at everything. And he's going to have a clear role at the next level, and it's not going to be probably a lead back or an every down back. To me, I think he's kind of a change of pace guy. So, Washington was at an 8 for contact balance. Coleman was at an 8.5. Washington was at a 7 for pad level. Coleman was at an 8.5. Washington was at an 8 for me for power, and Coleman was at a 9. So, these things, they're both good at this area of the game, but slight edge to Coleman. So I'm in agreement with you on that, and then just huge drop off to Emmett Johnson in this area. So the last thing that we got to talk about, one more quick note on the physicality before we move on. Fumbling. Washington Jr. had 10 fumbles in his career, whereas Emmett Johnson had 3 and Coleman had 2. So there was a bit of a fumbling issue for Mike Washington Jr. that is worth noting. I'll say more on that later. But let's talk about the third down skill set. So catching passes and being in pass protection, protecting your quarterback. And this, to me, like, if you've been following along here, you might be thinking, wow, like, Mike Washington seems like the clear winner, right? Like, he's got some elusiveness. He's almost as powerful as Jonah Coleman. He's the most athletic of the guys. Like, he's got the best vision and patience. We're loving Mike Washington Jr. This is kind of his downside here, is that he's by far, to me, has the worst third down skill set of these guys. On the flip side, this is what I absolutely love for Coleman and Johnson. This is why I'm still interested in these guys, even though they're more limited in what they do, because Coleman, being as big as he is and being a power back, but then also having a third down skill set, keeps him on the field, gives him some of that bell cow upside if a team chose to use him that way. But that's what's intriguing for me about Jonah Coleman, is he's not just a power back in the sense of like, oh, he's this big plotter that you're just going to bring him in goal line situations. Like, the fact that I have him at an 8, almost, or no, a 7.5 for burst at his size, and then also an 8 for receiving and an 8 for pass protection. This is where that upside comes in for him, that he can kind of play on every down and be in there in multiple situations. And so Coleman had great hands. He was really a weapon with the ball in his hands, and was creating extra yards after the catch. Emmett Johnson was even better. I had him at an 8.5 for receiving. He was not just catching the checkdowns, but he was running some pretty crisp routes out there, catching the ball out away from his frame, was a menace out in space with the ball in his hands. And Emmett Johnson, this was an area that went up. I had him at a 5 for pass pro, and I don't know what I was seeing the first time, but I bumped all that all the way up to a 7 on second watch. I didn't see really any problematic reps, and I saw a lot of pretty good reps. Like, he's not the strongest guy, as we've noted, but he has really good awareness. He knows where he's supposed to be, and he's willing to stick his body between the quarterback and that defender to create some extra time. And so he got the job done way more often than not. So, yeah, I had him at a 7 for pass pro. You're not going to have to bring this guy off the field. And Yeah, so those two guys, Coleman and Johnson, I thought this was a real strength, and then Mike Washington, not as much. I'll share more on him in a minute, but any thoughts there that you would want to add?
Yeah, no, Coleman in this area felt like the most well-rounded to me. He's not quite to the level that Emmett Johnson was, and like the running routes, splitting out wide, like doing something after the catch, being dynamic in open space. But he was still really good in this area. That didn't change for me. I had him at an 8 coming in. I have him at an 8 now. That wasn't really changing for me. I felt like where he really makes his money is he can stay on the field every single down. Like he protects the quarterback. He has advanced knowledge of picking up blitzes. He has the strength to do so. Like really performed well in this area. I gave a 6 to pass pro. I had him at a 5 for Emmett Johnson. He's at a 6 now. I thought he was okay. Again, like he didn't show phenomenal strength, but he seemed good enough. And pass pro, in that area where this really the rubber hits the road. I know you mentioned Mike Washington and us, really being excited about him. You want to talk about a back that you don't want on the field protecting your quarterback. It's
No.
it's Mike Washington. Like having him in pass protection is asking for your quarterback to die.
I don't understand because he's so big and strong. It's like physically he should be able to do it. He just looks lost out there. Like he has no idea where he should be. A lot of times it looks like he just doesn't care, doesn't try very hard. Like guys that he's supposed to block, he just kind of like gives them a little love tap and then lets them run right on by. It's just like, I mean, we saw this on first watch. I didn't change the grade at all. He was at a 2 out
No.
of 10 on first watch, and he still is.
I thought about going down to a 1, honestly, a little bit.
I was like, man, this is. And then as far as the actual pass catching, like he can catch passes. Like
He was average at he was average.
if you throw him a check down, there were a couple of drops, but he caught most of what was thrown his way. And but it wasn't as reliable in that area as Jonah Coleman. Jonah Coleman was also doing a little bit more in terms of like wheel routes or angle routes or, just some, like lining Jonah Coleman up in the slot or anything like that, but he can run the basic running back route tree. And whereas Coleman was basically just a check down guy and there were some drops and all that. But so I had him at a 6.5 for receiving. It's not a bad score, but with the other guys being 8+, it's a clear mark in their favor. So this is like, that's the thing that I have to weigh, because when I look at my overall grade, I'm at a 73 for Mike Washington. I'm at a 71.8 for Coleman and a 71.4 for Emmett Johnson. So that's like a decent little edge in Mike Washington Jr.'s favor. But that third down skill set, it does matter a lot from a fantasy perspective. So I think I'm still going to have Mike Washington Jr. as my RB2, just because he does have that like 1.5 lead in the recliner rating over the other guys. We'll see what happens in the draft. They're still like close together for me. In the battle for RB2, though, I think like clearly the best runner of the football, the guy that's the most dynamic, that is the most likely to be a lead back in the NFL, is Mike Washington Jr. So I'm leaning that way. But just for context, I think this is really helpful. I put this in our group chat yesterday because I was looking back at my grades from last year, and my biggest takeaway from all of this is not that Mike Washington Jr. is my RB2. My biggest takeaway from all of this is that on first watch, like all of these guys' grades came down from the first watch. I think there's a tendency of like, there's not really a strong RB2 in the class, and so we want to like sell ourselves on these guys with some hopium that like they're going to come and contribute on our fantasy rosters. But they all grade out more like flex options. So my takeaway is like, whoever the RB2 is, I'm lukewarm at best on them. I'm probably not going to take any running back in the first round of my rookie draft except for Jeremiah Love. These guys all feel like they should be second round rookie picks. And Let me just name for you some guys that I had from last year graded higher than any of Coleman, Johnson, or Washington Jr. So these are guys from last year. Damian Martinez, remember that guy? Trevor Etienne, Bashal Tutin, Devin Neal, Dylan Sampson, Woody Marks, RJ Harvey. Those are all guys that I had graded higher than any of the three that we talked about today. And almost all those guys were day 3 picks. Tutin, we hope, earns his way into a role this year with Etienne moving on. Trevor Etienne looks like he's kind of dead in the water. Damian Martinez looks like he's dead in the water. Like Devin Neal got a shot towards the end of last year with Kamara and Miller hurt, and he didn't really do much with it. Sampson is kind of buried behind Judkins. Marks had a good year. Harvey has some value, but that's the kind of range that we should be thinking about Coleman and Emmett Johnson and Mike Washington Jr. in. I just think that's really helpful context to see, like, okay, if these guys were in last year's class, they would be like RB 8 or 9, because I'm not even including, obviously, Omarion Hampton was higher. TreVeyon Henderson was higher. Ashton Jeanty, of course, was higher. Judkins was higher than these guys. So, yeah, I mean, I just think it's helpful context. This is a weak running back class. I think because it's a weak running back class, these 3 guys that we talked about tonight might get better draft capital than a lot of the guys that I just named, because all those guys were competing with each other, and NFL teams knew that, like, hey, I can wait till day 3 and I can still get a Cam Scattaboo or a Bashal Tutin or whatever. Whereas in this class, if a team needs a running back, like, you might have to spend a 3rd round pick on a guy like an Emmett Johnson, or a 2nd round pick on a guy like Mike Washington Jr. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think
it does, because the takeaway is just because the draft capital may be a day 2 pick on these guys. Like, one of my biggest takeaways from this entire rookie guide season and us scouting all these hours of film is it's such a strong wide receiver class that, like, why would you take a running back in the 1st round of your rookie drafts just because you may be running back heavy? Like, I'm always somebody that's like best player available approach, right? And for right now, like, that strength is just the wide receivers. Like, it is what it is at this point.
Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of good tight ends that you could consider up there, but yeah, I think these running backs, like, late 1st, maybe, but really I'm going to be looking at early 2nd for these guys. Like, if I'm on the clock at 110, I might see if I could trade back to 2-2 or 2-3 and see which of these running backs falls to me, because I'm not, like, so bullish on one over the other that I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to trade up and take one of them at 110. So, but yeah, good show. I think it was worth revisiting these guys. And it's just a good takeaway, honestly, that, hey, let's not reach on RB2 in this class just because we need a running back and we want one of them to be better than they actually are. So, good prospects, not great prospects. And we'll see what the draft does for these guys, because we know at the running back position, opportunity is everything anyway. So, with all that being said, we're going to wrap up the show. If you haven't already, join our free community Discord. The link will be in the show notes. No strings attached. We just want to get to know the people that listen to our show. Leave us a rating review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. And hope you guys have a blessed week. We'll see you next week.